Hey, I'm Dr. Greg Steinberg. I want to welcome you to Master the Mental Game webinar. And my goal is for you to enjoy the content we go over, but most importantly, learn from it and grow and hopefully move in the direction so that you can master the mental game if you're a player or if you're a coach or teacher to help other people master the mental game. I want to first tell you a little bit about myself. I've been on a 30-year journey in terms of performance psychology, but it really started as a tennis player. I do play golf now all the time, but I did play tennis and I was a competitive tennis player. You can see that's a hair don't. This was the 70s. What I always realized was that some people, after a bad break, they got devastated. Other people uh, tried harder. I always knew the mental game was so important for success. So it put me on a journey to study really mental game. Um, I went to UC Santa Barbara, studied psychology, went to Florida State, studied performance psychology, got my PhD at the University of Florida uh, in performance psychology, sports psychology, and now I've been teaching at Austin Peay State University for the last 28 years in sports psychology, performance psychology, and related areas. So I know a lot about the research, which I think is important. I know about the concepts and the theories. So it's not just me winging it when I talk about applied work or doing applied work. I base it in research. And I think that's very important. Another aspect that I do besides teach is I've worked with a lot of players. I worked with Brandt Snedeker. If you don't know him, he won the FedEx and one of the best players of a generation. I worked with a lot of collegiate teams, University of Florida men's golf team that won the NCAA championship. I've worked with Vanderbilt men's golf, and I worked with a lot of junior golfers, both men and women. Um, and so not only do I teach and do research, but I work with elite athletes and I also play golf. I play golf competitively. So I know what you're feeling with the pressure and everything. And of course, I love golf and I love talking about golf. And so you can see that when I talk about the mental game, it's a lot of fun for me because I enjoy it. And what I tell everybody, because people ask me, is golf mental, 100% mental, 50% mental, 40% mental? Well, I like to say that golf is 100% mental and 100% physical. You can't tease one from the other. They're both interconnected because when you're thinking well, you're playing well. And when you're playing well, you're thinking well. And conversely, when you're playing bad, you're thinking bad, and you get this downward spiral. So they're totally interconnected. And I think most people understand and believe the mental game is really important. They just don't know what to work on. And that's one of the goals of this webinar is to share with you what to work on so that you can develop mental toughness. Because I know you appreciate how important it is, but I just don't think you might not know what are some of the keys to work on. The other question I get is, how do some people raise their game under pressure? Because most people have talent, right? And how do the ones who are really talented, raise their game, where other players, they can't raise their game? And a great way to explain that is with this orange. First question, if I squeeze this orange, what comes out? Orange juice, right? Always orange juice. Second question, why? Why does orange juice come out? Because that is what's inside. Third question, what have you put inside? If you put in fear, negativity, and doubt, that's what comes out when you get squeezed, because we all get squeezed on the golf course, we get squeezed in life. That's the human condition. But if you put in joy and peace and compassion and love for the game, then when you get squeezed, you can raise your game. And that's what the great ones do. They put in the right mental juice and emotional juice. So under pressure, they raise their game. And that's my goal, is to share with you how to raise your game under pressure, because it's all about how well you play under pressure, right? Not how well you play when you're goofing around. But most people want to play their best when they're playing with their buddies for a couple of dollars, whatever it is. But when they want to play their best under pressure. And so that's the goal, is to show you how to raise your game under pressure by putting in the right mental juice. And if you can ask me kind of what my system is, um, I'd like to keep it simple, but ultimately you're your best model. So you're different than your friends. So we can't figure out what your friends are doing mentally. We got to figure out what makes you tick and what your strengths are and why you played your best. And then create positive habits around that, because everybody's unique. So we got to harness your uniqueness and then use that for let's say, the power. It's important to look at how other people are doing stuff. But again, think about your golf swing. Um, you might want to mimic someone, let's say, with your frame, but you don't want to mimic everyone's swing. You kind of have to figure out the swing for you that works best for you. Same thing with the mental game. You got to figure out what works best for you, and you're your best model. You know why you played your best, you know why you choke, and we can figure out how to move in that direction and harness those strengths. So I would say we don't have a lot of time in this webinar, but I would say the 5 that I want to focus are awareness, confidence is a choice, dealing with anxiety, concentration, and motivation. And there's a lot of topics we could talk about for hours and hours, but I'm just going to focus on these because I think these are very beneficial. So as it relates to awareness, the first thing that I do is I ask people, recall a time when you're playing your best. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? Did anything happen beforehand? What were you thinking about during? And then recall a time when you choked, you were at your worst. You didn't perform how you like. And what is like one main difference? And I think if you can figure out one main difference, maybe it relates to anxiety. You're fearful. You couldn't focus. You weren't confident. Then you really want to focus on that one main thing. And I think that's the key. When I work with elite athletes, when I work with golfers, professional golfers, collegiate golfers, young golfers, I usually focus on one thing. I go play golf with them, and I always say, if I could wave my magic wand, what would be one thing we could work on? And we focus on that. So think about, in this webinar, what would be one thing you would really want to work on? And it would probably be the difference between when you're choking and when you're playing your best. And also you want to know why. Why is that different? So if you have a lot of anxiety, maybe it's because of your fear. If you can't focus, maybe you've been you're distracted all the time. Whatever it is, if you know why, then it's a lot easier to move in the right direction. And so the why factor is key. So focus on the why as well, not just the differences, but the why. So when I work with especially young players, I say confidence is a choice. I mean, it's king, because it can reduce anxiety, can make you focus better, make you inspired to practice. But it's a choice. No matter how bad you're playing, you can be in a slump for weeks. You can still choose to be confident. Think about that. You can still choose to be confident. It's within your power. And when you make that choice, you're always going to play better. If you look at like Nelly Korda, she always looks like she's confident because she chooses to be confident. When I'm playing bad, I always kind of say a mantra: I choose to be confident. I choose to be confident. So it empowers you to know that that's your choice. And if you choose that, then you're going to be more confident. But of course, how do you stay confident? And that's what I want to talk about now, is what's kind of like the nitty gritty. And the reason why you got to focus on maintaining confidence is because we go up and down throughout the semester, throughout the season, even throughout your career. And the key is choosing to be confident, using these principles to stay confident. So when you're on that downward slide, you get back right up. But if you don't, then you kind of get in that big time slumping pattern. So our game goes like this. And if you choose to be confident, you get out of that trough a lot faster. So how you build confidence is what you say, which We're going to talk about these in more detail, which is self-talk, what you think, imagery, and how you act, and what you do. So those are the big four. So what you say, self-talk. I just love this story about Gary Player. He was rooming with Arnold Palmer, and he'd come back, and he would tell Arnie, "I love slow greens," because they were playing on slow greens. And then the next week they were playing on fast greens. He would come back and say, "I love fast greens." Um, so he always basically talked himself into greatness. And then there was a time where I know a story where when he was younger, he would point at the mirror and say, "You're going to be the greatest golfer of all time. You're going to be the greatest golfer." So he would always use self-talk to boost his confidence. And if you know Gary Player, he won all four majors. He's one of the greatest golfers of all time, especially in his generation. And he has an attitude of gratitude. He appreciates that. I've actually spoken to him, and he's grateful for what he's got. And I think that's real important as well. So he chooses to be confident, and he does that through self-talk. Tiger Woods. Most people think he's the greatest golfer of all time, but let's just say of his generation, definitely of his generation. And he was always his own best friend, because if you ever watched Tiger when he was in a slump, he'd always say to the media, "I'm close, I'm close." Well, think about that. If you're close, it's really like you're being your best friend. You're saying it's okay. You're right around the corner. You're going to be successful. And so he talked himself into greatness. I tell players to be your own best friend, which is have like a best friend's journal, and you write down every day something positive about yourself. And so you get into a habit of saying positive stuff. So when you get squeezed, right, the positive stuff comes out. I had a tendency, and I do this still. I always said, "I'm bringing my A game. I'm bringing my A game." That's kind of my self-statement. I always felt like I practiced really hard, and so I would bring my A game. And so I knew when I came to the course, I'm bringing my A game. So I felt confident. That was kind of like a mantra I like to use. Um, and the idea is with the mantra, you need to find something which I call buzzwords. Um, that help you stay confident. They could help you stay relaxed, be at peace if you're nervous. But, we're just talking about confidence here, but like bringing my A game, that was my mantra. And it would be good for you to find something like that where you can, when you feel like your confidence is kind of taking a dive a little bit, you say that mantra and it boosts your confidence. So it's self-talk. It's allows you to be your own best friend. And it's a mantra, which is a statement you use over and over again. What you think is what we call visualization or imagery. I know Jack Nicklaus, again, one of the greatest golfers of all time, of his generation. People would say he's one of the greatest golfers of all time, if not the greatest. He always said, "I never hit a shot until I saw it in my mind, where it was going to land." Because it's this mind-body connection, right? If we visualize, it gives us confidence. It can relax us. But what's interesting? A lot of people have tough time visualizing, and I found it interesting. For instance, if I'm on the putting green and people are, let's say, visualizing the arc of the putt, I say kind of feel like you roll it with your hand, and as soon as they do that, they can visualize it better because we're hand dominant, right? So if we use our hands to visualize, it helps us see the line. Or you're pitching, you can kind of feel like you're throwing the ball and see it land. If you're on the tee, feel like you're hitting a draw this way or a fade this way. The idea is if you use your hands, it helps you to visualize. Another thing I think is important, I tell people to develop a golden nugget book. And it means just time you hit a great shot, you write down, the day, what it felt like, and you keep that in your golf bag. So you look at that every once in a while to build your confidence back, and feeling of that great shot. We also know acting confident is important. It's called self-perception theory. How we act influences our emotions. So if we act confident, we feel confident. And Jordan Spieth, most of the time he acts confident, but sometimes he doesn't. And I think that hurts him. But the best ones, they always look like they're always acting confident. You can see, that self-belief. And no matter how bad they're playing, they're strutting their stuff. And I just want to pause here for a minute. So this webinar is sponsored by the International Golf Psychology Association. And they have an online course that I helped them create. It's at masteringgolfpsychology.com. You can go there and you can see the whole confidence section. There's 5 sections. You can see awareness, confidence, anxiety, concentration, motivation. Each section has videos, articles, and applied exercises. And you can see the confidence section for free and do a free ebook. Because you're on this webinar, you can take, the course is usually $399. It's been approved for continuing education by the PGA, which is really a good thing. It shows the credibility of the course. But you can take it for $89. So instead of $399, it's not half off, but instead of $399, you can actually take it for $89, which to me is a great deal. And you can, there's no time limit. You can take it for, once you're on in the course, you can take it, go back and look at the videos over and over again. So let me talk about anxiety, the third one. Anxiety is from our fear. All anxiety stems from fear. And we're afraid of looking foolish, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of letting our parents down. So that creates the anxiety, butterflies. I get ears tingling, my eyesight goes like this. Everybody's a little unique. But the idea is that it stems from a fear. And it's okay to be anxious, but when it's overwhelming, that's when it's a problem. And the reason why I say it's okay, because this fear is from the fight or flight response, and it creates, let's say, hormones released in our body, which makes our heart race and our ears tingle. But that those hormones that are released, epinephrine, norepinephrine, they're really stimulants, and they can make us think better, jump higher. They can actually make us play better, focus better. I know I can focus better under pressure. And so basically you can harness the power of anxiety. And the way you do that is you turn pressure into pleasure. When I work with Brad Snedeker, he'd always say, I love getting up and down, which is he's labeling the situation. He's not fearful of not getting up and down and making bogey or double bogey. He wants to kind of show off his skills. I love it. So he sees it as a challenge. He's enjoying it. And that's how when you label this anxiety as a positive, you channel it in a positive direction, and it can make you play better. So the idea is you embrace the fear, you embrace the challenge, you enjoy it, and that's how you turn the pressure into pleasure. There's also other types of anxiety. So there's thinking, which is called cognitive anxiety, and you can reframe it like we just did with turn pressure into pleasure. There's also feeling, which is somatic anxiety. And I think you got to deal with both. I always tell my players, you got to meditate. You got to learn to meditate. And all you got to do is, later in the evening in a comfy chair, relax your toes, relax your calves, relax your thighs. And then focus on your breathing. And after about 5 minutes, you're just focused on your breathing, you're meditating. That's called the relaxation response. And I maybe might use a word like, once I've in that relaxed state, I might breathe out and say the word calm in my mind, smooth. And I associate that word calm and smooth with that feeling. And then I can bring that onto the golf course. Anytime I'm nervous, I just say calm, smooth, or whatever you want to use. It's been associated with that feeling. You can bring it on the golf course, which is really important. The other important aspect is the relaxation response, once you're good at it, is more powerful than the anxiety response. So you get nervous, you can say, just relax, just relax. Well, you can't unless you practice meditation and other aspects to reduce your anxiety. But once you practice them, then they're more powerful than anxiety. So number 4, be in the moment, focus, concentration. It stems from a couple things. I do want to talk, there's so many things we could talk about, but I think one key aspect about being in the moment is having a pre-shower routine. A pre-shower routine is, let's say, a bubble around you that blocks out all the pressure, but puts you in that moment. And to me, the best pre-shower routine has 3 R's: relax, react, and rhythm, the 3 R's. And if you have that in your pre-shower routine, it's like putting the bubble around you so you're totally focused, you're blocking out anxiety, and you can basically play your best. Because what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for greatness. So a great pre-show routine sets you up for greatness or to play your best. So relax. So Scotty Scheffler, when you look at him, no matter what shot he's over, he looks totally relaxed. Why? Well, he's confident. He also has said, he believes in a higher power. And I think he lets go of outcome and he thinks, no matter how I'm playing, it's okay because he believes in a higher power. And we're not going to talk about that per se, but that gives him a sense of peace and calmness, which I think is really important. But you can do it maybe more physically. So to get relaxed before your shot, you can shrug your shoulders, breathe out, say your word like cool or smooth, and you can get into that state of mind as well. And you can use, of course, what Scotty Scheffler does too, believe in a greater power. Whatever works for you is the key, right? And so you got to be relaxed, react. So Davis Love III, he used to look at the hole, back at the ball when he was putting, look at the hole, back at the ball, and right when his eyes hit the back of the ball, he would take the putter back. So a lot of times we freeze over the putt. We need a trigger to kind of stay in motion. So the idea is you need to be in the reactive mind. And the reactive mind is what we call the right brain. And we know when you're in the zone, you're in the right brain. But ultimately, you need a trigger. So a trigger is something you could say or something you can do so you don't freeze over it and you're just reacting to the shot. Think about free throw shooting. You wouldn't do a free throw shot like this, 1, 2, and then hold the ball and then shoot, right? You'd freeze up. You go 1, 2, boom. Well, the same thing with putting, chipping, pitching. You need a trigger. So even with your full swing, maybe it's look once, back of the ball, look down the look at the fairway, back to the ball, fairway, and then when your eyes hit the back, you take it back, or you kick your knee in, something so you stay in motion. You're always in motion, and then you have a trigger to pull the club back. And then rhythm. I had the opportunity to work with Nick Faldo on a Golf Channel commercial, and so I got to ask him all these questions about what he does. And he said rhythm was key. And if you looked at his swing, it was so rhythmical, it was so beautiful. A lot of times, what I do is I notice if I'm working with a player, their rhythm's off. So in their routine, they get over the ball and it's 1 and 2, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The rhythm changes. So the idea is when you're over the ball, your rhythm has to stay the same. 1 and 2 and 3 and go. So it creates the trigger. It allows you to stay relaxed. But if your pre-shot routine is rhythmical, your swing's rhythmical. If your pre-shot routine is not rhythmical, it's hard for your swing to be rhythmical. So that's really important. You got to have a rhythmical routine so that your swing is rhythmical. And it's usually about the same amount of time. I know they did a study of Brandt Snedeker, and they said by the time he pulled his club out of the bag, he always hit it in 13 seconds. Now, that doesn't have to be for you, but the idea is most pre-show routines are the same amount of time. They're rhythmical. It's almost like you got an internal clock inside. And da 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 da. And so that's your swing, right? So the more rhythmical your routine, the more rhythmical your swing. Another aspect of this, which I think is real important, is a post-shot routine. A lot of times, if you don't let go of the bad stuff, it's like carrying a bag of bricks. So I tell people you got 3 seconds to figure out what you did wrong, visualize the correction, and then just say next shot. And so it's kind of like a mechanism to let go and then move into the next shot. Otherwise, you're going to carry that baggage. So again, having a post-shot routine is important to let go. And everyone's unique. You can figure out what works best for you. And that's what I do with my athletes. And then also a key thing is we practice being distracted. So when you practice being distracted, guess what? You are distracted. When you find yourself, let's just say your mind wandering and at home or at business or whatever it is, if it's wandering, you're actually training your mind to wander on the golf course. So if you say something like, be here now. So if you're talking to your boss or your kids and you find your mind wandering, you say, be here now, you pull it back to that moment. Then when you're on the golf course, you find your mind wandering, you say, be here now. You've trained your mind to be there. It's like, having the right juice, right? And you've got to have these positive habits. outside the golf course that you can bring onto the golf course. Key five is you got to be inspired to compete and practice. If you look at Tiger, he's always working on stuff. Some people said maybe that's been a problem, but he has a growth mindset. He's always trying to get better. It makes it fun for him, right? Not only does he want to be the best in the world, but he wants to get better and better and better. And I think that's real important. You got to have both mindsets. You want to be best on your team, in your club, amongst your friends, but you also want to keep on growing, keep on getting better. And those basically inspire you to compete and practice. What's interesting is related to this, the number one gripe or complaint that golfers have, that Golf Digest discovered because they did a survey, the number one complaint that golfers have is they can't take their best game from the range to the golf course or to competition. And the key is, how do you do that? It's called transfer. How do you take your best game from practice to competition? That's called transfer. And the closer these animals can get, they're not ever going to be the same, but the closer practice and competition can be, the greater the transfer. So you got to make practice. You got to put a lot of pressure on practice. You're on the range, how many fairways you can hit in a row, or how many putts you can hit, 20 in a row. And if you miss one, you got to go back and start over, put a lot of pressure on yourself. And then in competition or on a course, you got to do stuff like we talked about. Turn pressure into pleasure. You got to focus on, you've meditated so you can use your trigger word. And all that stuff gets you more relaxed in the golf course and in competition. So those animals get closer and the more your game transfers. So those are just a bunch of, I think, important keys that we talked about. There's so many more. And I couldn't only do so much in this webinar, but you can see all these other keys on the course, the Mastering Golf Psychology online course, basically conducted by the International Golf Psychology Association. And once you've passed the course, you can get a certificate saying you passed the course and you're a golf psychology expert. And again, instead of $399, it's $89 if you use that code webinar 89. So let me just finish by saying, I hope you enjoyed what we talked about tonight. I think the key is figuring out what you need to move in the right direction, work on the right things. So you put in the right juice, create positive mental habits so that when you get squeezed, you raise your game under pressure, because that's our main goal. So it's been my main goal to share with you how to raise your game under pressure to be the best golfer you can be.